Well, thank you very much. I was, first of all, I'm very honored to be asked to speak. I'm very, Dryden's always been home, and I've always been very glad to be part of the community. So basically, I'm just going to do a quick overview who I am, where I come from, and talk a bit about my program, because I'm very, and when I first of all, I have a cold, so I don't want to apologize beforehand. But second of all, some of the things I want to speak about are things that I've been involved with in the OPP, and share some stories of how like the OPP is providing support to our First Nation communities across the region. And in saying that, one of the things I do is really to be that extra resource to help communities, especially sometimes in tragic situations. But also, I do a lot of positive things to be proactive, to be engaged with the community, because there doesn't need to be always something tragic. It's important to have that established relationship, because if something does happen of emergency, they already know me, and there's that relationship developed. So I'm very fortunate. I've been policing for almost 20 years. I started my policing career off with Anishinaabe. Sorry, backstep a bit. I went to school at DHS, and then it took a few years to kind of find myself, and I worked at the mill and traveled a bit, and then I eventually went back to college. I went to Sault Ste. Marie. I went to Sault College. I took law and security and correctional worker, and then went over to Lake State and got my degree on criminal justice. So it's funny, with a bit of age and maturity, you basically recognize as at the right time things happen at the right time and right moments, because having that few years of finding myself, I always did okay in school, but never really recognized the importance of doing well academically. It wasn't until I got into college and had to pay for it myself that I realized this is a real investment in myself, so I really should make the best of it. So in saying that, I did really well in college, and I had really good professors there, and it really helped me prepare to get in policing. In the off years, in the off season, I used to work for the MNR, fought fires for the MNR, so I had a chance to get to see a lot of the northern communities in that capacity as an initial attack crew member. So I did that for about 3.5 years. So in saying that, after that, my final year, graduating from university, I wanted to apply at the OPP. That was my goal, to become an OPP member. I had co-op with the OPP here in Dryden, and it's something that kind of really perked my interest. And I knew that when the time is right, I would apply. So in saying that, I end up going to wait till the end of fire season. I did apply to Anishinaabe Police Service in the summertime, just to get a feel for an interview and see what happens. And lo and behold, I was in Alberta, and they called me. I was in Alberta fighting a fire, and then they called me to ask me basically if I want to go for an interview. I quickly did that, and before you know it, August, I was down at police college. Did that, and I got posted to Pickle Lake. That's right, Ozenburg, otherwise known as Mishkigogomeg. So I spent almost 2 years there, and I'm so grateful for the opportunities NAPS has given me to become a police officer. During that opportunity, I met a lot of great people that helped me become I like to think, a good officer. The relationship I developed back then and treating people with respect has paid so much dividends in my current job, especially when there's an emergency call in the community and they know me and they trust the level of what's going to happen. And when I speak to them about an emergency situation, they have a little more trust when it comes to the police. And unfortunately, there has been some history in the past where with the OPP that maybe there wasn't that same level of trust. And I'd like to think I'm doing my part to help break down those barriers and establishing positive relationship with our First Nation communities across the region. So, so when I worked in, like I said, I worked for NAPS almost for 2 years. I applied to the OPP, met the recruiter, gave me all the tough questions, and asked me if I wanted to go south or if I would go south, and I said yes, I would. So when I got hired, they did send me south to Ignace. So, so 300 kilometers south of Pickle Lake, I went to Ignace, and I worked there for 4.5 years. And then from there, I transferred over to Ignace, from Dryden, Ignace to Dryden. and worked in Dryden for another 4 years. And then this opportunity for this position came forward. I apologize here. And I became the Art Melt Coordinator, which is the Aboriginal Relations Team, Major Events Liaison Team. The OPP loves acronyms, eh? So the Art Melt. So, and then about 3 years ago, they simplified it to PLT. They got rid of both acronyms, which is basically to Provincial Liaison Team. So that's what I do for the region. There's a broad scope of things I get involved with the region and providing support. And some of the things I'll share with you, things I've been involved with. I really, really enjoy my job, and I don't want to say I love my job, because I love my kids, and I don't equate them the same, but I really know I make a difference of helping people in my job. So when I say I really enjoy my job, it really means a lot when I help people sometimes in bad situations and help them get through sometimes some trying situations, but at the same time, and I'll share a quick story here. Unfortunately, I was involved, deployed to a community of Slate Falls, where 5 people tragically drowned when their vehicle drove off a bridge. I was there to help the family, or the community, which was congregated about 200 yards away from the scene, and having to tell them that their loved ones had passed away. And it was really tough, because I'm basically doing a next of kin notification to 100 people, all waiting to hear about their loss of their loved ones, and spending some time with them to help them through that process. Fast forward to last year, when I spoke with the chief here in town, just happened to bump into her, and then she gave me a big hug and says, the community is so grateful for what you did to help us during that tragic event, and we never really did thank you. And it kind of caught me off guard, because that's, it validates sometimes the stuff I do to help communities and help people. So it really was appreciated, and there's nothing that can be said to help that is priceless in those situations. So some of the things I'm going to talk about quickly has to deal with the actual my program and things I've been involved with. And there's a couple pictures and slides I want to show, and we'll do that. So basically, kind of that's how things have evolved to where I am. So I've been doing this job since 2008. So we're looking at this March will be 10 years, really. So really enjoy it. Like I said, I cover the whole Northwest from the Manitoba border to White River and everything in between. So I put a lot of miles on my vehicles and getting to certain places. And in saying that, my phone goes off sometimes at all hours to, can you get to Marathon? Yeah, in about 6 hours on a good day. So unfortunately, some legacies from and events from the past. Oka and these are historical events, and Ipperwash. One of the biggest things that for my position has come about was from recommendations from Ipperwash and unfortunately the killing of Dudley George. And that's some of the things that when I go and speak to people and having to, especially when we're at a major event, at a integrated call, and that's what I mean, our ERT members are there. I get pulled into the situations to help debunk and kind of clarify. There's a real misunderstanding when it comes to the police, especially our tactical members, that they're thinking we're there to hurt somebody, and that's not the case. For any police officer having to use deadly force, it clearly has to be justified. But for me, I'm there to explain that to them and help them reassure that we want to work with the community. If you have valid information that can possibly de-escalate a situation, like either speaking to a family member or even getting a family member involved to help provide a recording to de-escalate a situation, that's what we'll do. And that's some of the things that I get involved with. And I by all means, sometimes people will say that, like the OPP, and they'll mention Ipperwash, and I don't shy away from it. I acknowledge it, because it is true. There were some mistakes made. And that's what I tell them too, is that when I speak with, you're right, absolutely right, there's been mistakes made in the past, and that's why I'm talking to you now, because we don't want those same mistakes being made. We want to be able to have that open and transparent line of communication when we deal with situations. So, again, just touching base on our mandate, is to establish and maintain open lines of communication with all stakeholders who may be affected directly or indirectly by a major event. And another thing they call it is like an Aboriginal critical incident. And that could be everything from a protest to an event where there's a barricade situation on a community, and having to work with the community or work with whatever stakeholders that may be involved, the community itself. Just again, our objectives here, and I'll quickly go over them in not for verbatim, but you basically want to develop a stronger relationships with key parties, particularly in First Nation leadership and community, and other stakeholders or activist groups that may be affected. Maintain and build upon this relationship between the OPP and communities, as well as stakeholders who may be involved with critical incidents or major events. And utilizing proactive communication techniques and gain compliance and cooperation with all parties to avoid unlawful protests. A few years back, there was a Idle No More movement that occurred, and the issues at hand at Idle No More had to do with everything from, living conditions on communities, suicide, murder and missing Indigenous women. There's a broad spectrum of issues, and each one of them are important. And in saying that, when we were involved with those, we don't want to stop them, and because the charter protects people's right to peaceful demonstration. So, but we want to work with them and try to do our best to have them understand that we're here for public safety. If you decide to protest along the side of the road, we'll slow traffic down while you demonstrate. We can't be, we will do our best to explain to them, you can't block the highway because that's a criminal offense, and get them to understand that. And it's not to be done in an intimidating manner, because they may not understand that is a criminal offense. So we give them informed information. If they decide to block it, they decide to block it, and then we'll deal with it after the fact. We try to give them information that helps manage the situation the best way we can. Again, document efforts that we made by the police to resolve these incidents, either through mediation or negotiations. Ensure that there's most progressive and appropriate negotiations and mediation techniques in forms of dialogue, and consider utilizing to avoid conflict or de-escalate situation. Ensure that officers at all levels, command, supervisor, frontline, are given support and advice and guidance to identify potential conflicts and direct a link to the command post, and a working partnership with all police agencies that may be involved. Also, work with and provide guidance to either through federal, provincial, or municipal stakeholders when dealing with potential conflict during these critical incidents. Just an understanding. So I work in the I work in the Aboriginal. Sorry, they just changed our name to the Indigenous Policing Bureau. So it says Aboriginal Policing Bureau, but they just changed the name recently. So I'm deployed to the region. There are 6 quartering areas across the province, all given a specific geographic area. So myself and Northeast have the biggest vast area, and my area has the most communities that I deal with, in a sense of First Nation communities. So a lot of time for the OPP, we don't, with just off the top of my head, there's like 21 Anishinaabe communities that we don't police, but there's a lot of times we get called to help support NAPS in a major event, and for my role is to be a part of that initial integrated call to help either be a family support in a major event, like a tragic event as like a CIB homicide case, or even if there was an event where, and sharing a story with you, I was deployed to North Spear Lake to a plane crash, and during that time myself and my partner, and again recognizing when these things happen, there's not a lot, it's a real challenge to get to some of these communities in the wintertime, just to get up there because of the remoteness and the flights availability. So being prepared to roll up your sleeves and help out any way you can is just part of the duties. So when I was there, community members would come onto the lake and come to the site where our identification unit, our ERT members, Transport Canada investigators are all there doing the investigation, and my role is to help talk to the people who would come, because if I wasn't there, they would be having to stop what they're doing go talk to the people and address the issues that they would have. Being there really kind of gave them a chance to continue the work, process everything, answer any questions they may have. And it, again, with a small community, when a tragic event like that happens, it really hits the community hard. And in that time, I had a situation where this gentleman came by himself, and this is probably day 2, and he pulled up to the scene in his truck, and he got out of his vehicle and started walking towards closer to the scene. So I approached him and asked him, hey, just introduce myself, is everything okay? And he proceeded to tell me that he was the first one on scene. He was operating the groomer, and he was trying to push snow onto the plane to put out the plane. And then this gentleman, he was a big gentleman, and he was probably like 6'4", probably big stature. And all of a sudden he started to break down, just started to sob and cry. And next thing you know, he's hugging me, and he's breaking down. And I mean, braced myself to hold him up while I hugged him. But, and I basically listened to him speak and just, did my best to reassure him that, like, what you did goes on beyond the scope of what most people would think about doing. You really did your best to try to put out the fire, but in those situations, snow is not gonna, basically industrial fire is not gonna be put out by snow. And you really tried, so you should be commended for your actions. And and just gave him a voice, because 2 or 3 days have gone by, and he just had this pent-up emotion that he had nobody to speak with. So having to be a person that can listen and help people is really is rewarding, and just being that extra person for the community. Again, that's some of the things I've been exposed to and helped out on. Obviously, the proactive component is meet with contacts during the quiet times, because there's not always an emergency. So like I do, sometimes it's a double-edged sword, because there's times where I'll be involved in community activities or do things, assign myself to be presentations or do things across the region, but then all of a sudden I have an operational component which obviously takes precedence. So I may be in Airland by Greenstone, and then I got a call, I have to be in Kenora the next day. So I'm driving across the region. There's no straight line, so I'm putting on a lot of miles to get back this side. So again, there are things you can do, I've done, like just to keep myself engaged in community, like walking the path is a program that helps build self-esteem to young kids in like grade 4 to grade 8. So I've done those at schools just to be engaged with the school and get kids to talk to the police, because sometimes they have a real false idea about police, and get them to realize I'm just a person too. I have kids, I have a sense of humor, and get them to see. And because most of the time I'm not in uniform, I do have to dust it off once in a while to show them, so I do have a couple slides with me with the uniform on, so, but. So, a couple of years ago, and I still do this every year, I do a life jacket campaign, and why I do it is because of that gentleman there. His name is Bobby Mainville, and he worked with me. So across the region, I myself, and at the time, I did just me. And across the region, and at each detachment, I have part-time members that work frontline policing, but they work with me on a part-time capacity. And I can call upon them when I need them. And that gentleman there, he worked with me in Port Francis in a part-time capacity. So, unfortunately, Bob and I still remember the week vividly, because there were so many things that happened to me that week, where on the Sunday night he called me that a kid that he helped coach hockey jumped off a bridge, not to hurt himself, but he, young and invincible, and he jumped off a bridge and he hit the water wrong, and he didn't come back up. And I remember Bob telling me how devastated he was about it, and we went down there, and I was down there on Monday, because this happened late Sunday night. Monday I was down there with Bob. Our OPP divers got up there Tuesday morning, and we recovered him right away, and I helped pull him out of the water and put him on the boat, and Bob was with the family. And I remember getting back to shore with the young man, getting him on the dock, and Bob being just hurt and sad that a kid that he helped coach hockey had passed away. And I remember hugging Bob, and him able to get his composure after all said and done. And the family showed up and they had a chance to see their son before he was taken away. And that was basically on a Tuesday. Unfortunately, on the Wednesday, I had to go to Pekanjicum, and a real bad day happened in Pekanjicum that next day for me. I won't go into that, but a real bad day of a riot in the community. But in saying that, I remember getting back to Dryden about 2 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, on Canada Day, and saying to myself, what had just happened, you know, and getting back home, and I remember saying to myself, this is the day off. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy the fireworks tonight and just enjoy the day. Enjoy cutting the grass. So that night I left my phone, everything at home, and then I went to the fireworks with my family. And then I got back, and then I got a message that my friend Bob drowned. So I was just in shock, and then headed down to Fort Frances and Couchiching, and basically spent 4 days trying to recover his body, and then when he was located, having to tell his mom the sad news, and meanwhile still help the other family that lost their son through that when attending that funeral. So it was a real hard week, and for a very long time I carried that, and I very much felt like there's nothing I can do. You know, there was unfortunately, when you lose your friend in a capacity like that, it's just heart-wrenching. So a few years go by, and I kept in touch with Bob's mom, and I came up with the idea of doing a life jacket campaign. And what I do is, every year I ask for donation, or anybody want to drop a life jacket at the OPP detachment, and I give them away to northern communities. So, and that's what it is. The top one here is I gave away about 155 life jackets to Camp Loon. It's like an Army Ranger camp in Greenstone, where they youth are taught life skills, and one of the things, they have boating activities. So each one of them left with a brand new life jacket. And I'm taking life jackets all across the north, as well as the areas around here, and giving away life jackets and promoting water safety. And in saying that, that's just my part to help me through this whole situation. And in the past, I want to say 3 years, I've nearly given away 2,000 life jackets to just, again, if one of those life jackets saves one life, you know, actually it's paid for itself, you know. So, and again, this is up in Pekanjicum. We went from Taxi Bay to the community, and each boat we seen, we had I think we had 70 life jackets in the boat going out to the community. Each boat we seen, we gave away life jackets. So these are teachers and just the community members that we stopped, and that was a stipulation when I said I gave them a life jacket, and they thought they were getting a ticket. I said, no, I'm giving you one. Which, like, you want a life jacket? They said, oh yes, for sure, but I have to take your picture. Like, So, as mentioned, there's things I've been involved with to help communities, and I've done sporting equipment drives and winter coats and clothing and drives, and that's been Pekanjicum there where we've done that. Very successful, and it's very rewarding, but at the same time it becomes very logistically challenging sometimes, because just to get all that up there, it becomes very taxing in a sense, because sometimes as much as you can be engaged in the community, you may have other operational commitments that it makes it very difficult. So I still will collect stuff, but not to the same extreme as I've done in the past, because it's just, and again, you're on a time restriction when it comes to the winter roads too, to go up north, because as soon as the end of February comes around, it starts getting mild real quick, and roads turn terrible. So one of the things just to mention, these are just events with a context, especially when it comes to Aboriginal critical incidents or type of protests. You know, the relationships, like the people I work with, yeah, I can develop friendships with them, but people I work with should be able, like my colleagues that work with me in my program, they should be able to step in and take over, and if I have to step away, and we've demonstrated that too, all across the region, the guys I work with. I have some excellent members that work with me that are on the same page of recognizing what we do and the significance of it. So I'm really pretty grateful to the people I work with, because it's good sense of humor. You know, there's a time and place for everything, to recognize you can vent on things that are bothering you, but even to have that support for your colleagues that are there, you know, walking the line with you. So one of the things that we were involved with in 2010 was the Coochie Chick, when they put a toll on the highway. Again, those situations are issues where they're not police issues to solve. Those are issues where between the community and 2 levels of government, and we're there to keep the peace and ensure nobody gets hurt. Public safety is paramount in a moody situation, and having to talk to people on both sides, especially when things are getting amped up in the sense of people's feelings and emotions. And sometimes I've had to speak to people on both sides, especially even though it would affect me too. Like, I'm getting it on both ends, having to tell people, like, and they're mad at the police, and but at the same time, I know I'm there to help everybody. I want to ensure nobody gets hurt, but I also want to ensure that nobody from the community side gets hurt, or any of the motorists. And sometimes it was like I said, it was a lot of times these situations the police can't solve, but we have a part to ensure that nobody gets hurt. Again, just a reactive component. Responding to average or critical incidents like a barricade person, a governance issue, blockage, protests within the OPP policing area. Assist First Nation policing partners with incidents as above. Assist the community in emergency situations. And one of the things that we've been involved with is forest fire evacuation. When you have a displacement of community members from a First Nation community, 300 people going from up north to Fort Francis, and having to help them. And we're there for the onset, for the initial, as they get established. After a while, we can step away because they're able to function and get things kind of organized. But initially, you'll have people who are on, who require medication, or people who are on certain restrictions of been involved with the law, but they're supposed to sign in at certain times. So we help make sure that things are coordinated that way with their policing jurisdiction up north. But again, be that extra resource for the community. So. Again, the forest fires and spring evacuations, those are the 2 key ones for us in our Northwest. Again, assist families in serious matters. Again, these are some of the things we're involved with. Unfortunately, and it is tragic, I've been up north a lot for a lot of youth suicides, and unfortunately, I've been there to help provide, do first aid on some young people when they've passed away. But at the same time, I know that you're doing your best to try to get these young people sometime help any way you can, and because when we've gone up there, the call for service for just general policing continues on, but then there will be these calls in the communities that there's concern about a high-risk youth that have taken off. So we're doing a lot of that, providing support to our frontline general law enforcement officers there to help alleviate that workload. And then sometimes it goes in spurts. So we do our best to help support each other, but also support the communities in these events. It's heart-wrenching because this summer was so busy, and I don't want to elaborate too much, but you see some of the people you take to the nursery station that tried to hurt themselves, and you just it's really, really sad. Solidarity demonstrations, unfortunately, in this day and age, if an event of significant happens in one part of the country, guaranteed things could happen in Ontario, and that happens all the time. We've had issues where out in the East Coast, there was a protest with shale fracking, which when the RCMP went to make the arrest, they had solidarity just demonstrations across the province to support that. There's more to the story that we're aware of with the police that sometimes the community's not aware of, so we do our best to remain neutral but give them informed information, but again, still work with communities ensuring that nobody gets hurt. These are some areas in our neck of the woods. This is in Nipigon, like an Isle No More movement, but again, we were able to coordinate with them so that they stayed on the island, and we were able to, they slow traffic down so people can get by. They got their message across, because that's one of the things that we, again, want them to, their message wants to be heard, and so we want to ensure that we want their message to get heard too. We want to work with you, not against you. So we would help that situation where we would direct traffic or slow down traffic to help accommodate that, And again, most of the time it works out perfectly fine. And then when we work with them, there's been times when this has happened, especially in this area in Nippigan, where we've had an emergency where an ambulance needed to go by. And they cleared the area so an ambulance can go through the area quite quickly, you know. That's having that partnership with them, you know, and understanding that component. Again, talking about forest fires up in this neck of the woods. This is again, 2011, it was a busy year. You can see where all the fires were. Again, in displacing the communities from these areas to some of the bigger centers, bigger Northwestern Ontario centers, or even our colleagues, like my colleagues in other parts of the region, were getting the displaced people into their communities and helping them. So, and that's some of the pictures here. These are people from Sandy Lake that went down south and meeting with people. So, unfortunately, some of them were living in cots in the arenas, you know, for temporary shelters. Recognizing this too, when a community or a group wants to do a protest, being engaged with them, find out what they want to do, how many people are, again, it's not intel, it's like working with them. So when you have I don't know how many people there, we'll just say about 80 so people are walking from point A here to point B around the corner, you know, there doesn't need to be a huge police presence. They're on the highway maybe a kilometer while they do this walk. But there's a huge spectrum of different people involved because you have like family members, like kids, young kids all walking. And again, this is an anti uranium mine development, so that was the reason for the protest. But sometimes they sensationalize on the people who are wearing all camoed up, and you know, and we can't control that, but in the same time, we recognize the audience of who's being there. And most of the time, when we meet with the appropriate people, stakeholders, leaders of the people, they see that we're there for their safety. So, again, recognizing the partnerships, broad scope of different agencies, either through private or even just through the government, everything from the EMO to Canada Border Services, other detachment, other police services. The community itself, depending what agencies are available, we're speaking to different First Nation agencies and getting their input for support to deal with situations. And these are just some of the, again, when I talk about partnership, right here, I partnered up with CP Police, and they basically assisted in giving a monetary donation to get life jackets to give life jackets to the communities along the CP corridor from Lake Helen all the way to Pick River, you know, so there's like 4 different communities where we gave away 200 life jackets to all the communities there, you know. So it's having like I said, it's being proactive and doing something to help, you know, potentially save a life. So, again, this last year we helped out with a healing walk, and a group of individuals from Goodagaming, along Lake 58, did a walk from that community all the way to Thunder Bay. Especially when you get across the Nippigan Bridge, we help facilitate that so they can get across the bridge safely. Again, this is that Eagle Lake Family Wellness, where myself and a couple colleagues did presentations on water safety, and again, just doing our best to help do proactive presentations. This is in Long Lake 58, where I did the walk in the path. And again, just working with the youth and doing mask making with them, and again, getting them to see the police in a different light for them too, you know, and getting them to comfortable to talk with me. And they ask a bunch of questions, questions, every question, like at their age group, they'll ask maybe some of the silly questions, but at the same time, like everything from, have you ever fired your gun off, or stuff like that, you know. So, but you know, you treat them with respect, and it comes back full circle. And like even now, like, it's funny. Many moons ago, probably about 2009, we did this youth camp up in Pekanchkum. So that was 9 years ago, and our initial group of 10 kids. One of those kids, I remember him because one of the kids' name was Norm, and that's the same name as my brother. So this kid was like full of energy, and like just like, you know, you always had to keep your eye on where's Norm, you know what I mean? But just, you know, we had these youth involved in these activities from night to day, and we kept them so busy. By the time they were up at 8 o'clock until 9 o'clock, they want to go to bed because we kept them so busy, and they had a structure, and it was a good week. So last year I was in Mechanicscom, and sometimes it's hard to keep in touch with some of these youth, but I see this tall, skinny young man looking at me funny, and he's just kind of staring at me. And back then, they gave me a nickname of Makwa, which is Ojibwe for bear. So I'm looking at this kid, go, hey, how are you? And and he goes, fine. He's being like, and very quiet and reserved. And I go, do I know you? He shakes his head. And I go, and he goes, hey, Makwa. And that's what he called me. And I go, Norm, hey. And meanwhile, he put on like 2 feet, and he's like super tall, and and just, so we caught up on things, and it was actually really, and now he works for the M&R, he fights fires for the M&R in the summertime, but it was so nice to see, like, obviously he remembers me, and I left a positive impression with him, but in the same time, it was good to see him, like, as a young man, see where he's at in the sense of, with everything that he's probably seen or been exposed to kind of have a good head on his shoulders, so. Again, these are just some of the things we've done, and that's the thing. I brought in my vest for them to wear and try it on, and they just all seem to love it, so. Yeah, and quickly, just again, some of the benefits. Obviously, changing the perception of police role at major events. Again, dispelling rumors, and that's some of the things, like I mentioned. Some of the communities have a false idea about the OPP when it comes to these situations. And I have been in a situation where we've been meeting where I've had to not challenge people, not start an argument, but just give them informed information. Because sometimes the information they have is false, and if you don't debunk it and give the accurate information, the people in the room are going to have that same false information and believe it, So there's been times where I've been in situations where I had to kind of say, no, that's not correct, because I know that because I was there, and you give them informed information. Again, recognizing, I won't go through all of it, but recognizing the importance of ensuring communities by decreasing individual violence. Again, cost effective. Again, better planning. Again, recognizing sometimes there doesn't need to be a heavy police presence in these situations. Again, from public inquiries and inquests, the police are being told that this is what citizens of Ontario want. So when there's a major critical incident, we have to do a log, and it's a chain email. So we'll have, and it's all for disclosure potentially. So we'll do a chain log that's kind of live, up to date of events that happen, and that's what kind of reflects there, of like we'll get direct messaging of situations that we can't solve these situations, but we have to ensure that public safety and key messages that when the police are involved in these situations, and those are the things that we'll attempt to kind of ensure that the public know. So. Again, well, at times when things are all said and done, especially when you're in situations that have been long, you naturally sometimes need to take a step away. When I was involved in the Couchiching toll, I was there for a week. Initially, been stepping away for a day to come back. It puts things in perspective. It's always because you're there, from like 6 o'clock in the morning till midnight, dealing with issues of whatever may arise. And it's very draining and grueling, because when it's all said and done, you still have to do your notes for the whole day, and get that caught up. So you're running on very little sleep sometimes, Again, recognizing, resetting the table throughout the conflict, not getting lost in the vortex, recognizing, and obviously, everybody has their own personal opinions on everything, and no matter what the situation is, but recognizing my role as a police officer in Ontario in a situation as that is to keep the peace and not to pick sides, but ensure public safety. And that message is always clear and concise, but also sometimes I may have to deliver a message that is not favorable, but recognizing that it's not to be taken personal. Like I have to ensure that you understand that when you block the highway, it's a criminal offense and you might be charged, and give them that information. Sometimes they understand, and most of the time when I say that, we've had those tough discussions when I was in Couchiching, but the relationship I have with the community now, like has flourished, and I have such a good relationship with the community that they ask for me for help for things to help them in community so many times, just by being respectful and open and transparent and having, like, setting the table. So, any questions at all? We're pretty much done here. So at the beginning of the presentation, it said mom. Last year I got an official designation from the Governor General. It's a member of merit. So my son, when I told my son we were going to go to Ottawa to go to Rideau Hall, and I get this acronym I can put at the back of my name, he said, "Does it mean you love your mom?" I go, "Yeah, tell him that's what it means." So it's a member of merit for police officers. So there's my son, my daughter, and my partner there, Shanna Lee, which I'm very lucky to have, and myself and the commissioner of the RCMP. So here's a couple of pictures. There's my two beautiful kids, and there's Pekanishkum. That's where we did that youth camp there. There's so many beautiful spots on that lake, you know, and you know, being involved, and you know, you for a brief moment you can stop and appreciate it, you know, and yeah. So I take my camera with me wherever I go to maybe take a snap to help, you know, appreciate those things like that. And again, here's this little guy from Pekanishkum there. He's a canine dog there. So, but
an official canine dog?
no, we just one of them. So, but that's about it. Any questions at all?